And you bring it up to your chest, and then back down, and then back up to your chest, and back down. The idea is you... Wait, is this the wrong video? What's going on, guys? My name is Bruce. Welcome back to my channel, and the effect I'm going to break down for you today is this. Okay, the best way to do this is to break it down into two different parts. The reason being is I shot this in two different parts, and it has to be that way for it to work. You'll see why in a second. Now, this effect is being taken from a video I made about a year ago. I'll actually link that video in the description below. If there's any other effects in that video you want me to break down, let me know in the comments of this video or that video, and I'll be more than happy to make it if enough people ask for it. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into it. So good news, to recreate this effect, all you need is Adobe After Effects. You don't need any plugins. The way this effect works is you're taking a still frame from the first clip, ideally the last frame of the first clip, you're printing that onto photo paper, and then you're using that photo as an actual prop in the next video. And then you do some After Effects wizardry in between it to make it flow together. Now, I know I say this all the time, but for this effect, you need to do some planning. You have to do some planning for this effect to work. Plan your shot, 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 plan your, 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 whoa! Alright. Weird. Anyway, now as you know, I plan everything in my notes on my phone. This is the best way to plan your shots. So I'll show you section 1, or part 1, from my notes on my phone, and I'll bring it up here so you can see exactly how I wrote this. Now, bear in mind, I wrote this about a year ago, and I haven't actually read this since then. Most of the stuff I've written down on this part 1, you don't need to worry about, mainly because this was a separate effect, which will be probably for a separate tutorial about where the glasses fall onto his face as he clicks his fingers. Like I said, if you haven't seen this video yet, I suggest you go and watch it. It's only a minute long. The link is in the description, and you can go and watch that video now so you know exactly how this all comes together. Part 1, models, Rob. Props, sunglasses, chips. Additional equipment, tripod, green screen. I didn't need a green screen. Storyboard and shot list. Lock camera off on tripod. Rob stands by the harbour looking into the camera. Rob brings both arms up, then clicks his fingers in one hand, do not move. With Rob in exact same position, walk around, put the chips in his hand, sunglasses on his face. Rob clicks his fingers again, takes a chip, eats it and smiles. So the way this effect works, I've got Rob to put his hand up like this and click his fingers. I've come around the camera, I've put the chips in his hand, and I've got him to click his fingers again and then eat the chip. All I then do is cut the part out of me walking around the camera, and because it's on a tripod, there's not going to be any change in the background. I'll show you that later on. That's not important to this effect, but the planning might be something you can learn from. Now, a few things to consider when you're taking your first clip and printing it out. Number 1, do not add a grade to it. And the reason I'm saying this is because if you add a grade to that photo, you're then going to be baking that color onto the picture. When you use that picture as a prop in the next part, you cannot remove that color without doing some tweaks and changes. Trust me, keep it either S-Log2, Rec 709, whatever you shot that in, keep it in that, and then grading it in the future, making all your clips match up will be so much easier. A few other things to consider. Unless you're getting these done professionally, which you can do if you want, it's just going to cost you more money, then they are going to look a little bit blurry and the colors are going to be slightly shifted. However, if you haven't added a grade to it, and as long as you're keeping it the same as your footage, then matching it up in post shouldn't be too hard. Now, because you need to take the still frame from the first clip and print it out and use it in the second clip, if you're planning on doing this all on the same day, you're going to have to find somewhere to go and print the photo off. It might be easier to shoot it across a few different days, which is what I did. It gave me time to go home and take the footage, find the clip I wanted to use, put it into a sequence, edit it how I want it to be, and then go and print it out onto photo paper. So like I said, let's jump into After Effects and I'll show you part 1 of this effect.
Okay then, so part 1. I'm just going to play this clip back for you. Now, the way that I've actually achieved this effect, even though it's not important to this transition, but it's probably worth noting, is the way I've done this is I've locked the camera off on a tripod, and I've just switched this layer off, and I'll just drag this along here, and you'll see he's clicked his fingers and then he's paused. He's stopped there as still as he can be. Then I've come into the shot, put the chips in his hand, put the glasses on his face. I've come out of the shot, and then he clicks his fingers again, and then he eats them and he smiles. What I've done is I've cut the clip here or around there where he's clicking his fingers, and then stuck it on top of this layer here. So then when I switch this layer back on, you'll notice it just looks like it's happening instantaneously. Now, this effect is achieved because the camera's off on a tripod and there's nothing moving around in the background. Had there was been, then you would have noticed that hard cut. I mean, there is because he's moving slightly, you know, he's not in the exact same position, but because it's quite quick, it just helps to sell the effect. The only other thing to note with this actual effect, for me, at least in my instance, was the C was a bit of a pain. What I actually did is I added a mask to this layer, so the C is always the bottom layer. And what I mean by that is if I switch this layer off, there's a big hole there because it's using the C from the layer below. Well, if I just switch this mask off quickly and play it back, watch the bottom right hand corner. I'll play it again. There's that hard cut, but with the mask on. And now watch. It's because obviously the C is changing from one shot to the next, and to try and get them to match up would have been, well, borderline impossible. So there is also as well some birds in the background flying, and there was some buses moving, but because they're so minimal and they're small, you don't notice it. But the C was a big one. When I played it back, I just noticed it just looked too hard, the cut, and I knew it was the C that was causing the problem. So a quick mask fixed that, but that wouldn't matter to you because you wouldn't probably be doing it by the C. But just note, if you decide to do this effect, then just remember to note that really. Okay, now actually how this effect takes place, or this transition happens, is what I've done is I'll bring this back into here. Now, something to note when you're looking at using a still is you want to find one that's basically going to be the end of your clip. So don't decide to put one, use the still frame here if you decide to carry on using the rest of the clip. So I decided I want him to finish about here. Probably not there, but something like that, where he's not pulling a funny face. There you go. I think it was that one I used. So what I did is I took this frame and I printed it out onto photo paper. So the way you do that is you would firstly mark the frame. So if you hit the star key on your keyboard, you can mark the layer, or if you click off the layer and where the playhead is and then hit the star key, you can mark the composition. And then if you click on that, right click and then settings, you could just write something like there you go. And then that means that you know which frame it is that frame is that you printed. Trust me, this really helps when you've got like a big composition and you might not come back to actually editing this for, I think it took me a good 3 weeks before I got to this scene. Had I not written this down, I wouldn't remember which frame it was I printed off. So always do this. Now the reason why I'm going to be printing, or I'm going to be using both of these layers, is because I've got a mask on one. Had you not done it, done this effect, and you're just going to be printing one single frame and not use one as a mask like me, you're probably just doing one layer and you wouldn't need to worry about masking or anything like that. So this is because it's in my circumstances, I've got both of them. So what you would do to print these off is you would take them to a local, supermarkets do it, or you can go to like Boots or something like that, or you can do it online. There's online services as well. To actually export this frame, if you have this on the playhead on the frame you want to export, and then come to composition, you can then go to save frame as, and then you can do it as a file or Photoshop layers. If you click file, then you can save it as a PNG or JPEG or whatever you wish, or you can save it as Photoshop layers, which will save these as individual layers. I'm just going to save it as a Photoshop layer quickly. It's Photoshop file, because I want to show you something. So you choose where you want to save it. Important to give it a name. So again, being organized. So if you was to write just something so you know what it is, then you hit render, and then that'll render out. And then I want to show you something quickly with this, which you'll realize when you actually come to print it off. Now, this is a 16:9 aspect ratio, and photos are not 16:9. I've actually got something off the internet which you can look at. This is the normal typical aspect ratios of photos, sizes. And I think the typical photo size, the normal print ones, are around this 4:6. The one I used was more this size, 6:8, because this was just too small When Tash was holding it on the photo, it just looked it would look too small. So this is the one that I chose to use instead. Now the problem with this is 6x8. So if we actually come into Photoshop, come to the crop tool, and we can't go backwards because it's landscape. So if we put in here 8x6, this is actually going to be the photo that's going to be printing off. This is the photo's paper size or aspect ratio, which is obviously going to be cutting off the corners, which we don't want. Now, a workaround for this would be to, well, firstly, do it like this. Problem with that is you're then going to be needing to actually zoom in further in the composition because you haven't got the extra here and here. Or another option is you could take this one to the photo printers, and then when you go to print it out, you just simply get either black or white lines top and bottom. And then what you could do is you could simply just cut them off. That's actually what I did for my one. So the photo that Tash was holding is not the correct aspect ratio of a photo, but it is the correct aspect ratio of a video, which makes life so much easier when it comes to editing it and making it all fit together. So yeah, just bear that in mind when you do go to print it out, because it's not something that you're probably going to think about until you actually come to it. All right, so yeah, that's the first part, and we'll go straight on to the next bit.
Okay, so part 1's done. We can move straight on to part 2, and I'll show you how I made this transition. Part 2. Models, Tash. Props. Last frame of Rob clip printed onto photo paper times 10 copies. Now, the reason why you might be asking, is there 10 copies, is because if I've got 10 copies, I've got 10 chances. This effect essentially is her taking the photo, having it up in front of the camera, bringing it back and ripping it up. If I've only got one photo, I've only got one chance. So the more photos I've got, the more chances I've got. So print off a few extra copies just to be safe. It's good to have practice pieces of paper as well. So further on down, I've written plain practice pieces of paper. When I first asked her to rip a piece of paper up, she wasn't doing it in the way that I wanted her to do it. Not that it was her fault, but she just wasn't doing it the way I intended it to be. So it's always good to have some practice pieces of paper or photo paper that she can get the feel of and exactly how I wanted her to tear the paper as well. Because we had these blank copies that she could practice on, it meant when it came to using the real actual photos, we just got more chances. Now, moving further on down, I've got additional equipment, tripod. I didn't need to use a tripod, but for this shot, I just wanted to. So, storyboard and shot list. Lock camera off on tripod, chest height. So it's going to be at her chest height. Tash holding photo straight out in front of her while looking into the camera. So I wanted her to have the photo out like this, and I wanted her to stare at the camera like this. So the photo is predominantly going to be covering her face for the first part, but then when she brings it back, you're going to see her staring into the camera, and I wanted it to be like a hard stare. So moving further on down, ensure the photo is completely still and parallel to the camera. This one is very important. Now, if the photo is off by this, like rotated, then you can work with that. All you do is rotate the footage. It's quite an easy fix. However, if the photo is off like this, then you're going to get perspective warps. Because you're taking the first clip and you're lining it up with the photo for the transition, you need to get that photo and that first clip lined up as close as you can. So if that photo is off by perspective, this part of the image is going to be a different perspective to this part of the image relative to the camera. So when you overlay the actual clip on top of it, it's not going to match up and you're going to have perspective shift. Now you can fix it in post with corner pinning and Bezier warp, but if you get it right in camera, it will save you a lot of time and it will probably make the effect so much more realistic. Anyway, Tash quickly brings the photo in towards her. So you have the photo here, she brings it in, then rips the photo up, flinging the pieces either side of her, make sure she's staring into the camera the whole time. Basically, Tash has got the photo up against the camera, holding it like this. She brings it in, she rips it up, stares into the camera, flings it either side, walks off, or that way. Capture a clean plate for the end credits. I didn't need to do that, that was just something I added in there anyway. So let's jump into After Effects again, and I'll show you part 2 of how I made this transition.
Okay, so part 2. This is going to be the whole effect that I'm going to break down for you. I think the easiest way to show you this would be to go into this composition, turn off these layers as I normally do, and we can start from Tash base clip. So this is the foundation of the effect, I guess you could say, or the foundation of the second part. This is just the photo of Rob printed off onto photo paper, and probably attempt number 110 of Tash ripping it up, staring into the camera, giving that evil stare that I really liked. It really worked really well, actually. And the only effects I've used on this is the unsharp mask. I shot this in Cine 4, so if you use camera profiles, I shot this in Cine 4 and it was a little bit soft, so I gave it a bit of a sharpen with an unsharp mask. I've done no color adjustments to this whatsoever. So that's the base clip, and the next one is Rob and his glasses, which is the one I showed you a minute ago, but I've added a freeze frame at the end. So where I said to you to add that little star, say you'd added a star here, then this is where the freeze frame would start, and then it just stays like that. The reason there's two is because there's two layers of Rob, because one was a mask. Had you not done the mask, you would just need to do one. Equally, you could just take a screenshot, a screen grab of it and stretched it out, or taken exported a frame and done it that way. There's always different ways you can do it, but I've just done a freeze frame. It's really easy. Right click, time, freeze frame, freeze hold, and then you can stretch it out like that. So that's that. The way the actual effect works, though, is I'll show you now. Is you can see here, and you can see this is the fake one because her fingers are covered by the photo. Here is where the transition actually takes place. But because in the composition above, which I'll show you in a moment, because this is quick, you don't see the fact it's going from one to the other. So because this is quick like that, and I've added motion blur, you won't really notice it. You will see it here more so because I'm going slower and there's no motion blur on this one. But the way this effect actually is working is because I'm using something called corner pin. So this is the main effect really. So if I switch it off, you can see it just snaps straight back to its original position. And the way corner pin works is it adds these points to either each corner of your layer, and then you can move them around. So you could probably understand now how this effect's taken place. But one better than that is you can do something called perspective corner pin and tracking, which is this up here. I would definitely go and watch some tutorials on how to use the tracker, but the corner pin, perspective corner pin one is really good for doing things like, screen replacements, putting pictures onto posters, stuff like that really. In fact, I'll actually show you quickly how you would do one. So this is one of the blanks that I've used. Anyway, perspective corner pin, you'd select your layer, you click track motion, come to this one and click perspective corner pin. We zoom in, and then what you can do is you can select these points and you can move them around, and you're going to select each corner of the photo. Now you want some good contrast points. So this is good. This is good. This one's good. Let's put it a little bit more over to the corner. By the way, I'm holding H and then clicking, and it gives you that little hand so you can move it around. Right, this one was a pain because there's not much contrast. It's the colors and the brightness is too similar. So then what you would do is once you've selected all these points, is you would click Analyze Forward, and let's see how that does. Yeah, and I'll stop it there. That's done okay. And then what you need to do is you need to have a target. So you need to have a target layer that you actually want to stick in this corner pin. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this layer. We're going to let's do some trippy Inception sort of effect. So let's just label this one photo. So let's just imagine this is the photo of Rob. So we write this as photo. Okay, so this wants a target. And if you choose photo as the target, click OK, and then we click apply. And what it's done is it's basically taken this one here and stuck it inside of that one. So now we've got some weird Inception effect. And what you can see there basically is if I move this now, it's stuck to it as well, which is how it's given that effect as it's stuck on the photo. So that's all well and good, but as you can see, this is looking quite square. And here, because she's pinching the photo, you can see that there's distortion, and paper is never completely square. It warps. So if I come out of this one, the other effect I've used on here is a Bezier warp, and as you can see, it's warped it so it matches the photo a little bit more. And I'll show you probably here is where it really comes into effect. If I zoom in, without the Bezier warp, it's just too straight and you can see the one beneath it. But with the Bezier warp, it just helps to hide it a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it just helps to hide it, which is the next main effect really. So corner pin and Bezier warp. I can't show you, how to actually use these keyframes on yours, but I've done this all manually. This was done all manually, so all these keyframes here was just me moving them around, and yeah, getting the picture to look more like it was stuck to the photo itself and make it look more realistic. Bezier warp itself, if you click it, what it does is it gives you these points here, so a little bit like corner pinning, but you can just warp, so you can actually get some curvature on your layer instead. But have a little play around and see what works for you really. You might not have to do this, but this was just something I added in to make it look a bit more realistic. Okay, so actually to get this photo to look like it's in the scene, it was just some color adjustments. So here there's basic and creative color adjustments. I think I adjusted these ones and I adjusted these ones. So this was the picture, this is the photo with no color adjustments. And as we come over here, this is it with all of the photo adjustments, color adjustments. And the ones I've used is, as it says, this will be different for your one. But this is just to make it look more realistic in the scene. The reason that's there and the reason that's there in those particular positions, I'll show you in a moment. But yeah, that's basically just making it look more like it's fitting into the actual scene itself. Ones underneath is faded film, saturation, tint balance. Again, this is just my own choice of how I got this to look, like it was more in the scene. You don't have to do it this way. There are other effects you can use. Tint is another really good effect. If you come to the effects and go for tint, this one here is a really, really good effect as well, which you can map white and black to certain colors, and then it also adjusts the rest in between. Another really good effect for something like this. That is the Lumetri or Lumetri, and the other thing about it is a blur. So from there to there was just to add a little bit of a blur. So as it transitions from being the video clip, you could say, into more of the photo, even though it's still moving. Yeah, as it's going from here to here, this is where the zoom is taking place, but you don't see that because that's in the composition above, which I'll show you in a second. So yeah, this is basically just to give it some blur because it was just too sharp. There's no way it was supposed to be that sharp, considering the fact, had she been standing half a meter away from the camera, the photo shouldn't have been as sharp as it was looking. Or should I say the video clip shouldn't have been as sharp as it was looking. So I added a Lumetri and a blur, which just gives you that more realistic effect. Okay, so the only other layers really with this composition is I've added her fingers, and the shadow. Sorry, there's her fingers and there's a shadow. Why I've done this on two separate layers, do you know what? I can't actually tell you the reason why. I'm not too sure. But had I turned off the fingers, you'll see that the photo obscures them. And when I switch them back on, you can see now they're there. But the shadow is just to make it look more realistic. As you can see, that just makes it look like she's actually holding the photo. If I took it off, I'd done the effect and I looked at it and I was like, that doesn't look right. And I just knew straight away it was because there was no shadow. The other thing with these layers is there's some position keyframes. And you'll see now, her fingers are going up and down like that, and that looks really weird. But the reason it looks weird is because this is where the actual clip starts, and then the fingers come down and then goes into the transition. But this in itself just looks a bit odd. But this is the base composition as such. And the reason why those fingers are coming down like that is because if I then move on to the composition above, so this is where basically the effect comes together now. So I'll just scrub through this and you'll see. Now you're probably wondering how I've actually got that to zoom out like that. And what I've done is, as you can see down here, I've used a 3D camera. So I'm going to turn this layer off for a second and I'll come back to that in a moment. But this layer here is a 3D camera, which is like a virtual camera, and it affects any layers that are using the 3D. So essentially, if I turn this camera off and play it back, this is exactly the same as the one underneath. The only reason why I've pre-composed it is because I want to stick it all together in one layer, make it 3D, and then use a camera. And the way the camera works is here is where the camera is zoomed out, and then here is where the camera is zoomed in. And because the clip starts where the camera is zoomed in, you don't know that the camera is zoomed in. So what I mean by that is if I click this on, the camera is zoomed in at this point, but you don't realize it. So only then, when it comes out, that the camera actually zooms out. It's sort of like working backwards really, because Rob is stuck to the photo the whole time. You just don't know like that. Now the other thing to notice is the fact that Tash's fingers are coming down, which is, like I said earlier, really I guess you could say quite important to have. It just made it look more realistic, and had her fingers been there the whole time, then you would have seen them in this part here. You would see her fingers up there, which is why they're animated to come down like that. Just something else to note though is on here, you'll notice from this frame is the same, I'll move this over, is the same frame as where I've got my color and my blur. So which is why you can see it's going from there to there, the blur and the color. So as it zooms out here, if you look at it carefully, you'll see that's also when the color shifted as well. So if you look at his face, you'll see there is where the colors are shifting and the contrast is changing, because that's the point, is where I want it to make it look like it's more realistic and more it's in the scene. And because of the blur, because of the speed of it, you don't realize it. Now, just a few other things to note on these layers is I've added motion blur. Motion blur is really important, especially for the zoom out. Had I not had motion blur, it just wouldn't look as good, as you can see. So that's why I've got motion blur on there. And also as well, something you might want to do is, if you're doing it this way and you lose quality, is you can adjust your sampling. I think I've set this to bicubic, I believe. So yeah, just want to set it to this one here. And I think it just sort of interpolates frames next to it to create a clearer picture. Or at least that's what I've been led to believe. Just have a little play around and see what really works for you. But this was the one that I got to give the best effect. It's not brilliant because I shot this in 120 frames a second and it's way too soft, but it's the best I did at the time. Now the only other layer I need to discuss really is this last one, which is this one here. And this layer is basically this one from there to there, and I exported it as a whole video clip. And you might be asking me why I've done that, but the reason I've done that is because what I did is, if you'll notice, if I switch it on, that I've added some keyframes to speed this up. So if I just play this back quickly, I've added some keyframes just to speed it up. That's all those are. And then here I've added a color shift, I think, desaturated it, and a slight keyframes just to speed up as she walks off. And then this is where I had the logo come over. So yeah, what I've done here really is I've just basically time remapped this layer, so you can see that it just helps to hide the fact that she's ripping up the photo, because there is the transition, and because it's quite quick, you don't notice it there to there. as much. And the reason why I've actually exported this as its own video clip and done it this way is because I like using frame blending when I'm using motion blur. For me, it just gives a much smoother look. It's not as realistic as real motion blur, but I could have used pixel motion blur, or I could have used force motion blur, but they just don't give the same effect in my opinion. So I like to use frame blending. This isn't technically the correct way to do it, but I just like doing it that way. And you can't do frame blending, or at least I don't think you can, using a composition. You can only do it on an actual layer itself. So what I did is I knew that this was all shot flat, so any color adjustments I'm going to do to the whole thing anyway, which is what I think I did in Premiere Pro. So what I did is I exported this as its own video clip, and then did some time remapping keyframes on it, there to there, and then I've added some frame blending. So if I actually switch that off and then show you, if I just render this back for you, it just looks so jaggedy. And then if we switch it on, how much better does that look? Or at least it does in my opinion. The only other thing to note really is the fact that this layer starts here, and that was because when I put this all the way to here and use frame blending, it just didn't look right with the motion blur. It just didn't match up for some reason, so that's why I've cut it there, this is essentially the same as this here, except for this one has motion blur, or frame blending, sorry, and this one doesn't. But you don't see the fact it goes from one to the other, which is why it matches up quite seamlessly. This wouldn't be important for you, which is probably why there's not much point going into too much detail about it, but it's just something that I needed to do for mine. Now there's obviously a lot of different tweaks that I've done on this, just because relative to how I've actually used this effect on my footage. But the base of this effect really that you need to concern yourself with is the corner pin, and using the tracker, and the Bezier warp, just to make it more rounded on the corners. And another thing as well is the Lumetri color, to fade it out, to make it look like it's more in the scene. Something I see a lot of people do when they do these sorts of effects is they have the video footage and it just looks like video footage. It just looks like that, and it just doesn't look realistic unless that's the look they want to go for. Another thing you can do is blend modes. Blend modes is another really good one as well. If you come to here and go to toggles, and you can adjust your blending modes. This won't work very well because there's a picture of Rob behind, so that you're going to get a ghosting effect if I did this. But had this been a plain piece of paper that she was using, then I could do it. However, if I was using a plain piece of paper, then I wouldn't be able to get the effect of her ripping it up. And that, guys, is the whole effect.
And that's all there is to it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've got any questions, leave me a comment below or hit me up on Instagram. My name's Bruce Visuals. I'll leave a link in the description. I'll also leave a link to the footage that I used in the description. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.